I'm Sari.
And I'm Haley.
And this is Seamwork Radio. Welcome back to Seamwork Radio, where we share practical ideas for building a creative process so you can sew with intention and joy. And today we're doing something a little bit different. We're answering your questions. So we asked our community to send in their biggest sewing questions, and you guys absolutely delivered. So we're going to cover how to choose the right fabrics for summer sewing, how to stay on track with your seasonal sewing plan when shiny new patterns keep tempting you, and what to do when you're in the middle of a project and things just aren't going the way you hoped. So I think this is going to be really fun. Let's start with our icebreaker for today, Haley. Tell me about a time when you asked someone for sewing advice and it completely changed how you approach something. So maybe it was a tip from like a mom or a friend or even a stranger in a fabric store.
Well, I'll tell you that my mom had zero helpful sewing advice. We had a seam ripper growing up, and she used it to trim her cuticles. And then when I learned, it's disturbing. And then when I learned how to sew, I was like, that's what that's for.
Oh my God.
Brutal.
Yeah.
Okay, so the advice that really changed things for me was, it was not advice that was given to me directly. I was in a tailoring class, and I was sitting next to my friend, and she asked the teacher a question that is no longer even important to me. But the answer, she was struggling with something. She asked for help. The answer that the teacher gave her name was Susan Monty. Thanks. She was also, would do composite drawings for the police. It's a very interesting woman.
Wow.
Yeah. She did one of me. I still have it. I should bring it in.
Wait. She did a composite drawing
like
of
a
you?
composite style drawing.
Oh, a composite style drawing.
Yeah.
I was going to say, did she have somebody like pick out your features? And
that would have been way cooler. No, she just like drew a composite style drawing of me. She said to my friend, Rachel, you need to learn when to use your baby hands and when to use your trucker hands. And it like really stopped me. It made me laugh, but it stopped me in my tracks. And it is a saying that is like really stayed with me over the years. Because I think even though she was trying to be funny and she was trying to shade my friend for really trying to like strong arm something into working, and tried to tell her she used to be more delicate. It's a question I ask myself sometimes when I'm struggling with something am I struggling with this because I need to use less force or more force?
Yeah.
Also, I feel like it's helpful advice in day-to-day life. Is this a place where you need to force things?
Yeah.
Or you need to let them exist the way they are? So that was like actually life-changing advice. I think I hear her voice in my head saying this all the time. If I'm like hemming chiffon, I'm like, baby hands, baby hands, baby hands, baby hands. Top stitching denim, trucker hands, trucker hands, trucker hands.
Isn't that funny? Because it was just a flippant comment.
It was
on
like
her part.
I doubt she remembered ever saying it or has ever repeated it again. But yeah, I think about it all the time.
You never know when something you say is going to change somebody else's life.
Right?
That's amazing. Well, mine is not quite so life-changing, but it has helped me many times over the years, which is, I just remember I was at Stone Mountain and Daughter in Berkeley, California, where I used to live, and I was trying to pick out thread for my project. So I had my fabric, and I was trying to decide between different colors of thread. And this really helpful person came over who worked there, a staff member came over to help me pick out thread and explained to me that when you're choosing between a couple different thread colors, to always go with the darker one.
Yeah.
And because it's going to blend a lot better. Not life-changing, but that has helped me so many times and made picking out thread so much easier over time. So I appreciate that a lot. And I think about it a lot because they were just being so helpful and nice. And I still love Stone Mountain so much.
Yeah, I buy a lot of fabric there.
It's such a wonderful store.
Yeah, I feel like all of us who have worked at a fabric store, we're trained to say the exact same thing. And that's because thread usually, most often, sits inside of a seam, which is slightly shadowed, and something that's lighter and more reflective is going to stand out more.
Yeah. And you see it if you take a bit of thread off the spool and put it on your fabric, that the lighter one pops.
Yeah.
Even though it looks like it's going to match.
Yeah. And you think of that person's advice all the time now.
Yeah.
Some advice that she offers probably 10 times a day.
Probably, yes. She's probably told many, many people that. But to me, it just shows you that like passing along even a small little tip to somebody who needs it can like have these reverberations for years to come, which is so, I don't know, that's very inspiring to me.
It's very girlhood to me. It's just the way that we I think often as women, we pass information to each other in such a way.
Yeah. Yeah. For better or worse sometimes.
Yes. True.
I was thinking about this just the other day because I feel like that's part of the reason why there's so much like shopping content on the internet is because not because there's anything malicious about it, but because women just like sharing things that they like and that are working for them. But when you have like thousands or millions of people doing that, it is so overwhelming. And so I was just thinking about that, like how it's this very innocent, like very actually nice thing that people do, but then it becomes the internet just magnifies everything a million times. So
yeah, well, it's something that's like meant to exist in a smaller way, and the internet gives us this access to multiply it.
Yeah, that's true of so many things. Just a multiplier that can't be controlled. Well, anyway, back to our topic. Before we get to that, if you have an icebreaker for a future episode, we would love to hear it. So if you have a question for us, you can leave it in a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, and we'll answer it in a future episode. Or if you want to leave it in a comment on Spotify, that's great too. And if you just want to leave a rating, if you don't want to leave a review, like take the time to write a review, that's helpful too. You can just leave us a 5-star rating and it'll help other people to find the show. So we really appreciate everybody who's done that. All right, let's talk about all of these questions that we have today. So one of my favorite things about the Seamwork community is just how willing everyone is to ask for help and to share what they know. It's just so cool. And I think there's sometimes a misconception that asking questions just means you're not good enough or, you're not talented enough at this thing, especially in creative hobbies. Like you should just magically know how to do everything. But honestly, after years and years of sewing, I still ask questions all the time. I ask our team, I ask people in the community, I'm looking things up constantly. And that's actually one of the things I love most about sewing. There's always something more to learn. You're never really done figuring things out. So we put out a call to the community asking what you're struggling with right now. And we got so many incredible questions. So we picked some of the ones that came up the most because if one person is asking, I guarantee dozens more are wondering the same thing. So a lot of the questions fell into 3 buckets: choosing the right fabrics for summer, sticking with a sewing plan, and dealing with projects that aren't going as expected, which I think, honestly, those are some of the biggest things in sewing, right? So what's an area where you feel like, Haley, getting a second opinion or troubleshooting with a friend is something that you do to this day?
I do this a lot. A couple areas come to mind. I do this sometimes with fit. I think that our own self-perception can sometimes get in the way of accurately diagnosing fit.
Yeah.
So I find that it's a helpful thing to get feedback on. I'm very fortunate in that I work with pattern makers every day. And if I try something on, Robin will tell me what to do if I'm stuck on what to do, or if she thinks I'm overfitting and overthinking it. I think that another place where I'll look for feedback is I have a friend that we text about sewing like constantly, and I'll troubleshoot techniques with her. Where if I feel like something is unnecessarily convoluted, or like there's a better way to do it, or maybe this fabric needs a different technique, will like, chances are it's not that I'm unfamiliar with like the right technique, but I just want to like talk through it
Yeah.
with someone and all of the pros and cons. And it's kind of fun to get really nitty gritty with someone who is also as equally as happy of getting nitty gritty. So if I really just like want to nerd out and zoom in on something, I'll text my friend Janine and we'll get into it. What about you? What do you like to get some help on?
I think one thing that comes to mind is fabric choice, because I feel like there are so many different dimensions to it between, the drape of the fabric, qualities of the fabric, and then just like color, pattern, everything. So sometimes I have a hard time choosing between different fabrics, and I love to get other people's opinions.
Yeah,
Just
totally.
to, not even, because I feel like their opinions are, more important than my own. I just feel like it helps you to think about things in different ways and hear what other people think. And then sometimes they see things that you don't see.
Yeah. And sometimes they give you an answer that you don't want to hear, and you didn't realize that you didn't want to hear it until you heard it.
That's true too. So I feel like that's an area where I do like to get a second opinion. And then, I turn to books a lot also, which I think is another way you can get advice, is just, I have a lot of great reference books that I feel like some of those old school sewing teachers are like my mentors,
Yeah. Oh, that's so true.
Yeah.
Well, let's get into some of these questions that we had people submit. So I'm going to read the first one off. It says, I want to sew clothing for summer, but I always end up choosing fabric that's too heavy or too warm. How do I pick the right fabric weight for hot weather? I think that this is such a common one. I mean, really, questions about choosing the correct fabric is something that we see come up time and time again. And I think it kind of comes down to understanding a little bit about fiber and weave, and not just like zeroing in on color or print, which I think is a mistake that a lot of people make. So first thing is to think about your fiber content. Natural fibers like cotton or linen or even rayon tend to breathe a lot better than synthetic fabrics, or even than silk. Silk can sometimes hold a lot of heat against your body. This doesn't mean that all synthetics are bad, because some performance fabrics are specifically designed to wick moisture. But as a general rule, natural fiber lets air circulate against your skin a little bit better. The second thing that I think is often overlooked is the weave or the knit structure. So things that have a more loose or an open weave, they're going to be cooler than things that have like a really tight, dense weave, even if they're like in the same fabric. So like a gauzy cotton is going to feel completely different than like a cotton twill would feel, for instance. So even though they're both cotton, they're going to feel a lot different on the body. A good test of this can be, if you're like still a little unsure about this, is to hold up the fabric to a light source. And if you can see a ton of light coming through, that is an indicator that it's a more open weave and it's going to breathe better. If it is more opaque and dense, then that's going to trap heat against your body. And then thirdly, weight matters as well. So you'll look for fabrics that are described as lightweight. So things like walls or lawn or gauze, lightweight linen or challis. These are all great lightweight fabrics in like a natural fiber. And then the last thing that I'll suggest is to think about how a garment fits. A loose, breezy silhouette in like a medium weight fabric can actually feel a lot cooler than a tight garment in a lightweight fabric, because you need air to circulate between your fabric and your body in order to maintain a comfortable temperature. So you're looking at a few different things here: fiber, the density of the weave or the knit, the weight, and the fit. And all four of these things are going to play into how comfortable things will be in hotter weather.
Yeah. I think it's really interesting to think about, especially that fit piece of it. I think that's something not a lot of people consider, is like that need for that air circulation. I think we think about it like when I wear loose clothes, obviously it feels more breezy, but when you're sewing, for some reason, I think sometimes people neglect that aspect when they're planning out their sewing.
Yeah, totally. And for instance, like I think of like a cotton lawn, beautiful, lightweight fabric. It is a denser weave. If you make something that is like a more fitted dress out of it, you are going to feel a lot warmer, even if you have the same amount of skin showing, as if you make something that is has more ample ease to it.
Yeah.
So it's not just your fabric; it's also what you're making out of it.
These are great tips. All right, well, let's get to the next question. So this person says, I did design your wardrobe this season and made a great plan, but I keep getting distracted every time a new pattern comes out. How do I stay focused? Okay, so I definitely feel this one. This one is like, so I think this is relevant to a lot of people, and that kind of like sense of FOMO around patterns and new things coming out. So here's the thing. I think getting excited about new patterns isn't necessarily a problem. I think it's just kind of being a creative person who just loves sewing. I think the problem is when that excitement pulls you completely away from the things you'd already really thoughtfully decided to make. And I actually think it's okay, and, to accept that sometimes that happens, and maybe you are excited enough about something that you do want to get a little bit sidetracked by it. And I don't think that's a problem necessarily either. I think we have to keep things flexible. The way I like to think about it is like this. Your Design Your Wardrobe plan is like a menu that you designed for yourself when you were thinking clearly about what you actually wanted to eat. So new pattern releases are like someone walking by with a beautiful plate of food. It looks amazing, but you've already ordered, and what you ordered is going to be delicious too. Or you can think about it like when you're going to the grocery store. You've planned out your meals for the week, and then you go to the grocery store and you see that pack of Oreos on the shelf. And I'm speaking from personal experience here. Oreos are my weakness. I love Oreos. But, you've already planned to make some banana bread this week, and maybe that's, more to your liking than Oreos are. So I think that's a really helpful kind of metaphor for thinking about it. So one practical thing I do is to keep a next season list. So when a new pattern comes out and I really love it, I don't just ignore it. I just save it and I add it to a running list of things that I want to consider for my next seasonal plan. And that way I'm not losing the idea. I'm just kind of parking it for now. I do this even with like the mood boards I make. Sometimes when I'm doing Design Your Wardrobe, I start out with a big mood board that has lots and lots of ideas on it, and then I edit it down to a few ideas. But then I return to that mood board when I'm planning the next season and look, oh, this was something I was excited about making. Am I still excited about making it? Maybe this is the season to do it. And I think it also helps to remember why you planned what you planned. So you chose specific projects because they fit your life and your wardrobe gaps and the fabrics that you already have. And a new pattern doesn't change any of those things. So I think it's really helpful just to keep in mind. And that said, like I was saying earlier, I don't think your plan should be a prison for yourself necessarily. If something comes out that genuinely fills a gap that you didn't see before, it's totally fine to swap it in. The plan is just a tool. It's not a contract. And that's why we have wildcards in Design Your Wardrobe too, so that you can kind of build that in, knowing that you might come across something that you're excited about. And sometimes what I like to do is just have a wild card in my plan and a few ideas for how I might want to fill that if I decide to make that extra project.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like a bonus that way.
I often will do that with, because lots of times when we're planning for a season, it's like early in the season or maybe late in the previous season. And I know I plan for, okay, well, I know I want to make like a midi length woven dress in the spring. I bet like in the next month, there's going to be a ton of really cute pattern releases. So I'll have a little placeholder there. And I might have one or two ideas for, okay, if there's nothing released that I'm like obsessed with, I really want to make this dress instead.
Yeah.
But that can be a nice way to have a plan that's like accounts for that agility. but is still a plan.
Yeah. Yeah, I think keeping it flexible is a really important thing.
Yeah, I agree. A plan is only like helpful for as long as it's helpful. If you like are keep to it to a fault, then it may not be serving you quite as well as you think it is.
Yeah. Let's not be rigid about it.
Yeah.
It's just well, like I said, it's a tool. It's a way to
Totally.
assist yourself.
Yeah, I agree. All right, well, let's get into this next question. This person wrote, "Summer is so hectic for me. Kids are at home, we're traveling. There are a million activities. I barely have any sewing time. How do you make the most of really short sessions?" I really relate to this. I'm sure that a lot of people relate to this, whether you have kids at home for the summer or you have out of town guests or a million travel plans or you're just really busy at work. Summer just seems to be a really hectic time for so many people. And I think that a lot of us feel like we need to have this really big chunk of time to sew. And if we don't have it, then we just can't start at all. I know that I've been guilty of this. The biggest shift for me was giving myself permission to just do one small thing at a time. You don't have to like sit down and sew an entire garment. You can cut out a pattern. You can sew literally a seam. You can press some pieces. Every little step counts as movement towards your goal. One thing that helped me a lot is ending each session by kind of setting yourself up for the next one. So before you walk away, you can lay out the next pieces that you need to sew or pin the next seam. That way, when you come back to it, even if it's like 3 days later, you can sit down and have like a more concrete point to take off from and like immediately get into sewing without having to like figure out like where you left off. Even something like printing out your pattern instructions and crossing out the sections that you've already done or checking them off.
Yeah, I like to do that. I think you gave me that tip of printing out the table of contents from the instructions and then checking it off. That's really helpful.
Yeah, it can be hugely helpful as a stop and go sewer. That can come in clutch. I also think that it helps to choose projects that work for short sessions. So projects with lots of small, distinct steps are actually really good for this because each step feels like a little like contained project in itself. And there's a small win kind of hidden in that, project. I think like a button up is surprisingly great for this.
Yeah, I actually found this with making jeans too. There's so many like parts to it that it's actually quite easy to work on over a longer period of time in short bursts.
Yeah, I think that sometimes there's a tendency to want to do quick and easy things when you have limited time. And sometimes that can definitely be the approach, but I would say don't discount something that is a little bit more involved because they're often better projects for breaking down in this way.
Yeah, and just take more time to do it.
And honestly, I find that even 15 minutes of sewing can be really like a restorative practice for me. It doesn't have to be like a whole marathon. Sometimes getting your hands on fabric for a few minutes is like enough to make you feel like you've done something creative with your day.
Yeah.
Something that I've been doing lately is like once a month, I set aside a couple hours to like print and cut a project and prep all of the elastic and notions and all of those kinds of things. And I find that to be really motivating to keep me going in my little burst, because I do find that cutting is the one thing that for me, I need to do it all in one sitting. I can't spread it out. So if you can find 1 full hour to do all of your cutting and then the rest you can do over time, that's been the ticket for me.
That helps me too. I like to batch my cutting whenever possible.
I aspire to that someday.
All right, well, let's get to the next question. So this person says, I'm about halfway through a dress and it's just not looking how I imagined. I feel kind of deflated. Should I push through or should I scrap it? And this is such a universal feeling. I just want to start by saying almost every project goes through kind of an ugly phase. That middle stage where nothing is hemmed and nothing is pressed and the edges are raw and it just looks like a mess. I think that's normal and that's totally part of it. So it might just be that you're going through that ugly stage right now and it'll all come together. Um, or maybe not. But before you make any decisions, I'd say press everything. So seriously, just press all your seams, put it on a hanger or a dress form, and then look at it again. Because I think you'd be amazed at how different something looks once it's pressed versus when it's just kind of crumpled up on your sewing table. And then ask yourself what specifically isn't working. Is it the fit? Is it the fabric? Is it the style? Because I think the answer might be different for each of those. If it's a fit issue, that's often something you can still adjust. You can take it in, you can let it out, you can adjust a dart or even add a new dart. It might not require starting over. There might be adjustments you can make. If it's the fabric, like you chose something that doesn't drape the way you wanted, that is a little bit harder to fix. But it's also a really valuable lesson for next time. You know now that there's something about the fabric that you didn't see before. And if it's the style and you just don't like how it looks on you, I'd say try to finish it anyway if you can, and then wear it a few times because sometimes garments grow on you. And even if they don't, you practiced every skill in that project and you'll carry that forward to the next one. So what I wouldn't do is let one disappointing project stop you from sewing altogether. I think that's the real loss, not necessarily the dress, but the momentum and the sense of accomplishment. I think you should, even if it doesn't turn out, you should still feel accomplished that you took the opportunity to make something and to practice and gave it your all.
Yeah, I think that those are all really valuable pieces of advice. To elaborate on the ugly phase of things, as a designer, I see ideas from like inception to launch. And every single pattern I've ever worked on goes through at least one ugly phase.
Well, it doesn't help some of the fabrics we use for fit samples.
We often buy like inexpensive fabrics to like test things in. And so sometimes
crazy colors.
Yeah, crazy colors because we get like the reject color that's on sale. And so it's just like so bananas looking. And then usually around like the second or third proto, things start coming together. You're like, yeah, I'm into it. Then the photo models come in, you see it, you're like, what was I thinking? It's kind of weird, huh? And then you finally see it sewn up in the fashion fabric. You're like, oh my God, thank God I trust myself. This is way cuter than I thought it was going to. I second guessed myself a dozen times throughout the entire process. So I think that it's a very good sign that you are really thinking through all of your choices and like analyzing the things that you make.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's get into this next question. This listener wrote, I keep making the same types of things over and over. Basic tops, simple skirts. I want to try something more adventurous, but I get nervous about wasting fabric on something I might mess up. Any advice? First, I think that it's great that you're recognizing this and wanting to push yourself to make something like a little bit different or a little bit more challenging. I think that's a really great first step. And I think for sometimes that can be like the hardest part is just that pattern recognition. One thing that I think that I would suggest is to think of it more like a spectrum rather than like a big leap. You don't need to do like a whole 180 to see like a noticeable change. So you don't need to go from like basic t-shirt to tailored blazer overnight. One small step beyond what you usually make could be impactful enough or a great starting place. So maybe it could be something like adding a new detail to a pattern you already know. Like you could switch from a basic hem to a curved one, or add like a cool pocket, or try a new neckline finish. Another approach would be to sew a more adventurous piece, but to sew it in an inexpensive fabric first, like thrift a bed sheet or buy some cheap muslin or use something from the remnant bin. I think that this can take some of the pressure off. If it works out, then I think that's great. Now you have the confidence to make it in a fabric you're really excited about. And if it doesn't, then you've learned something and it has cost you very little. I also think that it's worth questioning the idea of like wasting fabric. If you've learned from the experience, then was it really wasteful? Think about it like as an investment in your skills. Musicians practice on real instruments. Painters use real paint. And I think that you're allowed to use real fabric to learn. And honestly, working through a challenging project and having it to come together, even if it's like imperfectly, is going to be the best feeling. And there's going to be a lot of growth that will happen from that. And you'll find that the next time you go and sew a basic top or a simple skirt, that you're going to bring all of that growth from those heftier projects into those projects as well, and likely be happier with the outcomes of those.
That is also great advice. All right, well, let's get to our final question. How many projects should I realistically plan for a season when I do design your wardrobe? I always overplan and then feel bad when I don't finish everything. I love this question because it's something I've personally gotten wrong so many times. So my advice is plan fewer projects than you think you can handle. Like seriously, whatever number you're thinking right now, just cut it in half or at least by a third. And here's why. We tend to estimate based on our most optimistic, uninterrupted, fully motivated selves, but then real life is not really like that. You know, you're going to have busy weeks. You'll have a project that takes longer than expected. Your machine will need servicing. I've definitely been there. And that's all fine unless you've planned so much that falling behind starts to feel like failure. I think a good starting point for most people is 3 to 5 projects per season, not more than that. And if you finish early, you can always add more, but you'll feel so much better just completing 4 projects that you love instead of starting 8 and then only finishing 2. Another thing is mix up your difficulty levels. So don't just plan 5 really complex projects. Plan 1 or 2 that challenge you and then fill in the rest with things that you can sew confidently. I think that mix really keeps it interesting without making it overwhelming. And, don't feel bad if you have to adjust your plan mid-season. Like we've been talking about, the plan serves you. You don't serve the plan. If you need to drop a project or swap one out, that's not failing. That's just being responsive to your own life. So just, again, think of it as a tool, as a guide for yourself. All right, well, let me recap the questions and advice that we talked about today. So we talked about choosing lighter, breathable fabrics for summer by paying attention to fiber content and weave structure and fit. We talked about staying focused on your seasonal sewing plan without ignoring your excitement for new patterns, but keeping a next season list, as it's a really great tool for that. We covered how to make the most of short sewing sessions, especially during busy summer months, by setting yourself up for the next step before you walk away. We discussed what to do when a project isn't going how you imagined. So press everything, diagnose the specific issue, and try to push through it if you can. We encourage you to push past your comfort zone gradually and to let go of the idea that using fabric to learn is a waste. And we talked about planning a realistic number of projects for the season and that fewer is almost always better. So what's your big takeaway from today's episode, Haley?
I think that my big takeaway is, or something I was thinking about is that something I really like about sewing is there's often like dozens of ways to approach the same issue or the same technique. And I think it helps us to get out of that mindset that there's only one right way to do things or to approach things.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that I really love and admire about sewing. It's a place where I can challenge that mindset that I think is like really drilled into us in a multitude of ways in our life. And it's also a place where we get to experiment and try new things and not be afraid of making mistakes. And I think that I would challenge everyone listening to view sewing a little bit more through that lens. There's no one right answer. There's no one right way. You're not in trouble if you're wrong. Use sewing as a place to experiment with that mindset and then take that into the world
Yeah.
with you.
Yeah, my takeaway is kind of similar, or at least related. The theme that I sense from a lot of these questions is kind of like holding ourselves to these really high standards and
Mhm.
being kind of unrelenting with them. And I think it's hard if you are inclined to do that, which I am as well, to get away from that. But I think you can see sewing as kind of a way to practice moving away from using standards to kind of punish yourself,
Yeah.
which I think a lot of people do, is just like create these really high standards for themselves. And then when they don't meet them because real life gets in the way, inevitably, using that to beat yourself up. And I think that's a very common pattern for a lot of us. And you can break that by just everyday activities like sewing,
Mhm.
and finding ways to notice when you're doing that and use your hobbies, use your just your everyday things that you do to kind of approach life a little bit differently.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for all those great questions, you guys. Those were awesome. We'll do another episode like this soon. Let us know how you felt about it if you like these Q&A episodes. I think one of the things that made this episode so great is that these questions came directly from our community. And honestly, this is what happens in the Seamwork community every single day. Just people asking questions, sharing what they've learned, helping each other work through these exact kind of challenges. So if you heard a question that resonated with you, I want you to know there's a whole community of people who get it. Our private community has thousands and thousands of sewists who are there to cheer you on and answer your questions with zero judgment, and share their own projects and experiences. And it's one of the most supportive creative spaces I've ever been a part of. And our team is in there too. And if some of today's topics got you wanting to dig deeper, we've got some free resources that can help. So if the question about seasonal planning spoke to you, you can grab our free sewing planner at seamwork.com/go/planner. That's a printable tool that helps you sketch looks and plan projects and keep everything in one place. And if you're thinking about your sewing setup and how to make it easier to squeeze in those short sessions, you can download our free guide, The Ultimate Guide to Setting Up Your Sewing Space, at seamwork.com/go/sewing spaces. And it's full of ideas for creating a space that works for you, even if you don't have a dedicated sewing room. And if you want a little hit of sewing inspiration in your inbox every week, sign up for my Snippets newsletter at getsnippets.com. It's free. It's got over 200,000 subscribers, and you'll get a new sewing tip every week, along with some free videos and a lot more. We send out 5 ideas for your sewing every week. It's really fun. And I think you'll really enjoy it. Haley contributes to that a lot and shares her own sewing ideas. So I think you guys will really enjoy it. If you like this episode, we would love it if you would leave us a review. You can leave it on Apple Podcasts, or you can leave us a comment on Spotify. We read that as well. If you don't have time to write a review, you can even just leave us a 5-star rating, and it really helps other people to find the show. So we super, super appreciate it. You can also follow us on YouTube at Seamwork Video. You can follow us on Instagram at Seamwork. And if you'd like to become part of the Seamwork community that I just talked about, head over to seamwork.com to learn how to join. That's it for us this week. I'm Sari.
And I'm Haley.
And this is Seamwork Radio.